Hello, everyone. Welcome to HR Rewritten, a seat at the taboo table. Let's just go ahead and say it. Hiring is broken. We punish employment gaps like they're confessions. We preach second chances while disqualifying people automatically. We run candidates through 6 interviews because leadership can't make a decision. And then we complain about a talent crisis. Tonight, we're done pretending that that's neutral because systems don't accidentally produce bias. They reflect the fear of the people who built them. Let that sink in for a minute. And if hiring culture has grown complacent or performative, we brought someone in tonight who doesn't reward either. He doesn't romanticize broken systems. He doesn't sanitize uncomfortable truths. And he doesn't confuse risk management with moral judgment. He calls himself the John Wick of HR, which means when something in hiring is inefficient, performative, or quietly discriminatory, he doesn't debate it, he dismantles it. Not loud, not reckless, just precise, intentional, and very difficult to ignore. Russell Irby, welcome to a seat at the taboo table.
So thrilled to be here tonight.
And
Thank you
as
for being here.
always, I'm joined by my co host, someone who doesn't chase noise, she chases clarity. She doesn't escalate chaos, she sharpens the conversation. Calm under pressure, disciplined in her thinking, sharp enough to cut through comfort without raising her voice. She holds hard conversations steady, and she does it without theatrics. Rebecca Newbury, glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Russell, for being on the show this evening. I know Tori and I have just been so excited. Tonight couldn't come fast enough. But before we go any further, I want to be clear about something. And this table exists because Victoria refuses to let leadership conversations stay silent when they need to be honest. So she built this space to examine what most organizations would rather not, be in. But she sets the standards here, and it's not for applause, it's not for performance, it's for substance. If you sit at this table, you come prepared to think, you come prepared to defend your position, and you also come prepared to question your assumptions. That's the expectation, and here's how we operate. Tori, did you want to go over the rules of engagement?
Go ahead, ma'am.
All right. So at this table, we're examining systems, not personalities. We challenge ideas. We don't attack people. If you disagree, good. Bring evidence, bring experience, bring clarity. We don't hide behind buzzwords. We don't default to outrage, and we don't confuse discomfort with harm. We do not participate in political agendas, ideological words, campaigns, or religious debates. The space is about leadership, hiring practices, and professional accountability. And we can't stress enough professional accountability. It's nothing more and nothing less. If something stings tonight, take a breath, and ask whether it's truth pressing on bias, and then engage. We don't tiptoe around the truth here. So, Victoria, I'm going to send it back to you.
Well, Russell, I want to give you an opportunity to say all the things that maybe I didn't capture in your intro. I just wanted everyone to pull up a chair and join us tonight because I feel like this is going to be a lively, spirited, taboo conversation. So I'll turn it over to you and let you lead us.
Like I said, I've been doing this HR thing since Moses crossed the water about 25 years ago, back when HR was a glorified admin. That's what it was. And it was breaking out into what it's become today. And as I've gone through, it has changed. It has changed a lot. But at the same time, the ideas, the we do a lot of talk about what's needed, but then we back down.
Right.
HR is fought. They say I'm fighting for a seat at the table, and I've talked about that. Turn over the table. Don't care. Do you have the intestinal fortitude to do your job? If so, do the job. Don't use the pretty words, the buzzwords. In fact, like I said, that's where the HR honey badger came from. Actually, it was a district manager friend of mine who's still a dear friend of mine from Lowe's, and he said, "You know what you remind me of?" I said, "No." He goes, "A honey badger." I didn't even know what a honey badger was. He goes, "You go in, you just start attacking stuff, you destroy stuff." He says, "Anything you don't want and can't be used, you make your stink all over it so nobody else will, and then you go on your merry way." I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." And whether it's bull in the china shop, as you said, John Wick of HR, I've relocated a lot because I became a fixer, but that was a problem. It was where operations didn't have the intestinal fortitude to have uncomfortable conversations.
Mhm.
So instead, they found somebody who would. They would send me out, but yet, like I said, that takes that HR purpose and it changed it into something it shouldn't have been. I became an operations hatchet man,
Yeah.
and I have that nickname, but I don't like it as much. I put it out there to remind me of what HR is not. We are the one that keeps them to the wall, but we shouldn't be the hatchet man for the operational side.
And that's why I think so many times it's like you show up in a room, right? Or I used to show up in rooms and they're like, "Oh God, HR is here." I don't want, and I said, I'm not that person. And by the end of the conversation, when you move around the room and the end of the conversation, they're like, "Yeah, you're not as bad as what we thought you would be." And I was like, "I can still terminate you, but I'll do it nicely."
And that's what we have to be. We are, and as my people have seen it, or they talk about it, I've been in a discussion just today where it's very conducive, very helpful, and then the person wants to play silly games. And as one of my people just said, it says, it's like the change happens. She goes, the voice inflection changes, your whole facial expression changes, and now it's not nice anymore. She goes, and it just hits that point. And we have to be that constantly. And people don't see that.
Nope.
They can't see everything that we do. We can't go out there and laud what we've just done because we just helped someone whose family member died, or we just got someone hooked up with treatment who just found out they got prostate cancer. We can't go out on the floor. Hey, guess what? John's got prostate cancer and we fixed everything. All they see is the layoff announcements or, we're the fund police or whatever. They don't see what HR really is.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So we talked back and forth a little bit about 2 or 3 topics that we want to bring to the table tonight that we want your insight on. We want you to reflect on them. And I think we'll jump into the first one. We've also, for those of you listening tonight, sitting at the table virtually with us, please feel free to ask questions. That's what we're here for. I always reiterate, there are no stupid questions. Please ask away. We'll keep an eye on the chat and we'll bring you guys in when we have a chance. The first one we want to talk about is a big hot topic right now, right? And a lot of people that come to me or have come to me lately, they're like, "Well, I've been out of work since last April. How do I do my resume? What do I put on my resume?" And it brought something to mind. Like, we survived a global pandemic. Why are we still discrediting people that maybe, you don't know the reason. You don't need to know the reason. I say,
Exactly.
I've been saying for a couple of years, I wish there were no names on resumes. I wish it was just a list of skill sets. I don't even need to know the place you worked. I want to know the skills that you have, right? And then I want to bring you in for an interview because I think face-to-face does matter. But why do we penalize people for giving care to a loved one in their end of life stage and they took 6 months off of work to do that? Why is that? What do we need to do to fix this problem?
Got to step back. This is near and dear to me. Something I preach a lot. If anybody that follows me on there, if I get teary-eyed, it's all right. I'll deal with it. I work with I have a foundation, a nonprofit, the Reset Project Foundation. I help inmates or pre-release inmates with their resumes, their interview skills. I help people in rehab, specialize in vets sometimes, because they run into that same problem. My brother ran into that problem. That's why it's near and dear to my heart. But we have a group. I'll just go with someone I work with not too recently. He got arrested, and he was in jail for a little over 3 months. During the investigation, found out he wasn't the one. So they patted him on the head. Sorry, you're good to go. 3 months, he's lost his job. 3 months, he's in financial. Tells me, by the way, if you think that the state gives you any money for that, they don't.
Right.
Because they haven't broken any laws. You were arrested as part of the investigation. His family, because, whether the wife believed it or not, no. Because he'd been in trouble a little bit before, never big. So he's losing everything. And suddenly told, okay, now go back and have your life. So what does he put on that 3-month gap? I was in jail. They'll automatically disqualify him at that point in time.
Absolutely.
So that's the situation that we're looking at. What if they have been in jail? If they serve their time, it's the only thing that you do, that you complete the sentence, you do everything you're told to do to fix it, and then you penalize for it. If you buy a house, you finish the payments, you own the house. It's done. You've paid it. The car, the same. Prison sentence? Nope. We want people in rehab. We want people to get clean. We want people to get their lives together. Get them off the street. Get them off from homeless. Get them off the drugs. But find out that they spent 6 months in rehab or 90 days in rehab. There's that gap. Oh, sorry. You've got a gap, and they got to explain I was in rehab. Ooh, no.
Yeah.
So it's that bureaucracy. It's that catch-22, because it's all about control, and that's what you were talking about. It's, I'm going to control this narrative. I'm going to find out what your gaps are, because I need to know why. As you said, maybe it was a year off because I had cancer, and then you ask me. Now I tell you I had cancer. Is that breaking my HIPAA now? And if it's not, if you don't give me the job, was it because I was out with cancer, which is against the law? That's why I've been, like you said, just get rid of the gaps. Yep. Get rid of them. There's not one thing that gaps matter anymore, as far as I'm concerned. I'll argue that all day long to the folks that argue for them.
And honestly, how does it work that we've moved in a direction that you don't get to do reference checking anymore. You can give dates of employment, right? So we've moved in that direction to kind of remove some of the bias, but at the same time, we're still implementing bias because we want to know about that gap. We want to know about it. Is it because you want to be empathetic to me because my mother was battling cancer for 6 months and I watched her take her last breath? No, I don't think so. You want control over me and you want to be able to use that again. Well, you have a 6 months gap. So, surely the whole last 20 years of your skill set went down the drain, right? It's on a complete reset. Like, I don't even understand how we got here, but it's broken and we need to fix it.
Did y'all see the backlash I got when I put out a fix for that? I told folks, state of Kansas, I was let go, laid off twice in 3 years. So I know about that gap when they're asking, oh, what's this 6 month gap? Laid off. And they act like you had leprosy or something.
Right.
So what I did now, I went to the state of Kansas. I paid $30. I got a business license. That's the Reset Project Foundation. Something I've been doing for about 20 years, but now it's a business for me. And that's going to be a nonprofit. So guess what? If it happens and terrible thing happens, I work in higher education now and there's never layoffs, but say there is, guess what? Russ will never have another gap because Russ is the director of the Reset Project Foundation. They can check it. It's a real company. It's going to have a real board of directors. It has everything. So I told folks, spend $30, spend another $270 with the IRS as a nonprofit. And then, go to your local library and say, hey, can I help you with something? Can I help out homeless folks here? And that way, then I may not be paying you, but they're clients. So you even got viable clients that can be contacted. So it's a real company, maybe it's an article in the newspaper, and there's never another gap. People were yelling at me, that's cheating. I'm like, well, that's not really doing a job. I'm like, well, you don't really need to know what the gap was either, but And yeah, I got a lot of backlash for giving them for taking away their ability to challenge gaps.
Taking their ability to control.
Exactly.
That's what it's really about. Let's throw a question to the audience. Becky, do you want to jump in and ask Russell anything? You
Well, one of the things that I was actually just thinking was, when people ask about a gap and you just say, I took some time off of work, you shouldn't have to say anything beyond that. And if they press, why did you leave your last employer? Well, you can either say because the culture sucked and the owner made terrible business decisions. You can't say that. So, I've been kind of posting more of just say, I exercise my at will right, to leave.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I will tell you, talk about getting, hammered. I was getting jumped online from all these
Oh yeah.
people. And then they start throwing their credentials at you. I've done this. I've done this. I'm like, that's good for you,
Right.
but, a lot of it is just old school thinking too. This is how it's been done all the way up until this point. And really, I want to ask Russell just real quick, how are we going to change that? Do we have
And
to
that's
wait
it
for the older
mindset.
generation to exit before we start doing that? I mean, how do we shake
Right.
it up?
And that's why it doesn't seem even fair. Say in higher education, where I work at now, I just started there. If one of them takes a sabbatical so that they can rest and get stuff and research and recharge, that's a great thing. They're expected to.
Mhm.
So what about when it's not in higher education? Why can't I take mental health time?
Right.
Why can't I, who was overseas for 6 months, or when I was traveling, when I would leave on Mondays, come home on Fridays when I was working for Lowe's, why can't I want to just take 30 to 60 days and actually find out what my kids' names are again? Take some
So
time and go, maybe it's in the summer, go spend a week, 2 weeks, a month. But yet we're going to preach home life balance. We're going to preach wellness. We're going to put up our posters and we're going to get our EAP, but God, don't use it. And we're going to do
right.
all this to make it look like we actually
We
care.
offer these great vacation,
Yes.
accruals and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, you're right.
Unlimited PTO, but don't use it though.
Yes. Yes.
Because they're gonna put it on their calendar and check when you're using it.
Yeah.
I had a great just a sidebar for you today. I had a friend, a longtime friend. She always reaches out to me for HR advice, and she sends me this snapshot, and she said now they're starting weekly surveys at my company, and she screenshotted the email, and it says right in the email, the surveys are anonymous. I said, don't you ever believe that. Not for 1 second. Don't ever believe that. They're not anonymous. Don't believe it. And for those of you in the chat, if you want to fight me like a honey bear. I will fight you on that one. They're never anonymous. And then down further in the email, it says, don't forward the email because every link is individually coded. And I'm like, right there is your answer. This is all a bunch of BS in this long email to say, hey, guess what? Big Brother's micromanaging you.
Mhm.
That's all it is. And it's like, it's got to stop. This nonsense has got to stop. So let's poll the audience really quick. Have you ever been felt like you have been forced to justify a life event that you took off work for a period of time? So start answering now in the chat. So you mentioned, Russell, the criminal record, right? And it's near and dear. And I want to hear more about your foundation, right?
All right. Like I said, I dealt with my brother. And I remember once somebody telling me, well, I could never work next to a felon. How do I trust that? My brother's felony is because he drove 3 times without a license. Habitual offender. What is his situation? He had a seizure. So they took his license. But he also had a wife and kids, lived out in the country. It was on a tobacco farm. So 10 miles to work. Was he supposed to do? Walk? Even in the winter? No, he drove. Why? Was it illegal? Yes. Did he know it was illegal? Yes. But at the same time, he needed to feed his family. He needed to take care, have benefits. So he picks up a felony. loses his job, and now for the rest of his life, he has a felony record. So, trying to help out those folks. How do we fill the gaps? How do we, even get them involved in situations? I have some of them on my board of directors because I need also that. But so now they can put that on their resume, and I tell them, check things out like that out. Develop their own situations, their own, 501(c)(3)s. Volunteer. Even if you volunteer, you get to put it on your resume.
Right.
So whatever they can do to fill up these parts on there, the rehab or what have you, volunteer while you're in the rehab.
Right.
Help out with others. That way the rehab time now becomes a volunteer incident. Whatever way you can do to get around that. I have gentlemen, I work with sex offenders also. And I have gentlemen who were in that situation where they met someone in a bar who had an ID, because you had to have an ID to get in.
Yeah.
But once again, now it's statutory because she wasn't that age. And guess what? Now he's a sex offender for the rest of his life. He's on the list for the rest of his life. He's got that on his record, and he has to put it down wherever he goes, when basically, for the grace of God, go I, or for almost anybody that I know that's ever had that situation when they were young in a bar. So, that there needs to be help. We need to help those folks who are struggling and need that second chance. Now, there are jobs they can't have, yes. But I remember working for Sodexo, and by the way, throwing their name, they're great, by the way. As long as you haven't had a violent felony in 10 years, you can work at Sodexo.
That's what I was talking about today. Becky and I were just talking about this because I did an interview panel today with military folks that are transitioning out of the military into civilian life. And one of the things I noticed in talking to the young people that I talked to is most of them joined the military right out of high school. They've never integrated into civilian life. They don't know what it's like to have a civilian job. They know what it's like to work in the Army or one of the branches of the military. But I noticed a gap. That was one of the questions that was asked of me. How do I integrate back into society? Yep. And it doesn't just apply to military folks. It applies to people that have been incarcerated. But when Becky and I were talking earlier, I said, I get it. There's registered sex offenders. I get all that. But how long? Do we develop a program that has a tiered structure? And I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there, not for a judge to review it, not for corrupt politicians to review it and make the choices, but do we develop a tiered system that after 10 years, if you've worked and contributed fruitfully to society. I'm not saying put a sex offender working at a daycare. I'm not saying that. But do we roll some of the restrictions back? What does that look like? How do we do that, Russell? Do we need to form a 501(c) and get this going? Because I'm passionate about veterans, and I'm passionate about people that have been incarcerated. I don't think and really quickly, I just want to share a story. I'll share it as quickly as I can because I want to pass it back to you for your thoughts. But probably when I very first started in HR 30 years ago, I started in the staffing industry, right? And so I hired for a bunch of different companies. And this gentleman came in to see me one day and he said, "Hey, I need a job. I don't care where you put me. I need a job." And I said, "Okay, well, got to pass a drug screen. I'm going to be honest with you, got to pass a drug screen." And he said, "I can pass a drug screen." And I noticed that he had a teardrop tattoo on his eye, right? And we all know what that means. We all went through the training, right? We all went through the training, how to identify what the little signals are and what the subliminal messages are and all that. And folks, this is 30 years ago, right? Lots of things have changed since then. And it was back when on applications, I know we even have people listening from other countries. So this is America, right? This is how the US of A has done things. But back a long time ago or years ago, You had to answer the question on a job application, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And it said plainly on there, if you lie about it, because we're going to do a background check on you. And if you lie about it, then that gives us ground for termination when your background check comes back, if we've already hired you, right? So another way to control you. So that got removed eventually. But at that time, this gentleman completed an application, and that was one of the questions. And he answered it honestly. He said, I've been convicted of a felony. You couldn't specifically ask them, but you could lead a conversation, right? And I said, is there anything that we can talk about that? He goes, yep. What do you want to know? Ask me anything. I'll tell you. And I said, I just want to know what you can share with me. And he said, I was raised in a single parent home in California. By the time I was 14, I was infiltrated into a gang. I got mixed up with the wrong people. I was using drugs. I was running the streets all hours of the day and night. And I killed a guy. I killed him. He made me mad. I killed him. I said, okay. All right. And he said, what else do you need to know? He said, I am sitting here today telling you I need a job. I have a wife at home. I need to help support her. And I cannot find a job in this town. This job is a town of 10,000 people. Everybody knows everybody. I was born and raised there. Everybody knows my parents, my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, their dogs, their cats, all of it. Right. I said, okay. Let me see what I can do. I hired for several companies. I worked very closely with the guy that ran the environmental services department at the hospital. And I called him and I said, hey, I need to run something by you. And if you tell me no, I'm good with it. Right. But I've got a guy. He's a convicted felon. He's done his time. It happened in California. He'll be completely open and honest with you. And he goes, I want him. He goes, I just have to call HR and see if there's anything specific I have to do. But he said, I want him because he said, I need somebody that'll show up. I said, he'll shovel snow for you. He'll do whatever you need him to do. Right. Got him a job for 4 years. And then I was transferred out of that office for 4 years. The guy never missed a day of work. And when Jerry could only give him 32 hours a week, the lady that ran the cafeteria, the food service program, said, hey, I like this guy. He comes in and eats lunch in here. I'll put him in the back washing dishes if he wants to, because I've always got somebody calling out sick back there. He was like, I'll do it. He got overtime hours, didn't make great money. But nobody that worked there made great money, right? It was not a great paying job, but he proved that he was worthy of having a job. He understood the mistake he had made. And I was like, I could talk to him. I bet you if I went back to my hometown and if he's still there and I saw him, I bet we could catch up like nothing ever happened. But when I got ready to move out of that office, he came to me one day because Jerry had told him that I was moving. I was leaving that office. And he said, I just want to say thank you because you gave me a chance when no one else would. And you know what I can say, Russell and Becky? That's why I've worked 30 years in HR, for stories exactly like that, because humans matter.
Yep.
Yep.
That's what the human resources is supposed to be about.
We was at Liberty University, Sodexo, and we needed chefs. Couldn't get them because all the places in town could pay more. And I found out about the felony thing. So I went to the local prisons. They had a culinary program. They trained chefs.
Right.
But of course they get out. No one give them a job. I went to probation and parole and said, who you got? And I'll give them a job. I got called by a certain president and said, what are you doing bringing inmates on my campus? I'm like, they need a job. We got jobs. And I said, isn't this supposed to be about forgiveness anyway? Now, that was probably poking the bear a little hard. So the exact words were, if they mess up, they're gone. And when they're gone, you'll be right after them. They didn't. They were there. Like I said, they needed a job. No one else was going to give them one. They came to work every day. Plus, if they didn't come to work, it was a parole violation. But they worked hard. They wanted to move up. And where others didn't. I had folks that wouldn't show up half the time God
Yeah.
knows during the pandemic, it happened working in a warehouse. But that's it. They need that job. How we have this system where we say, okay, you owe restitution, you owe this. And if you don't pay it, we're locking you up again. So now the guy's at 90 days, he's at the edge, no one's giving him a job. He either pays this money or goes back into prison. So what does he have to lose for committing another crime? If he commits the crime and gets caught, he goes back to prison. If he doesn't commit the crime and make the money, he goes back to prison. Might as well go out and commit the crime. So we forced the person back into a life of crime by not letting them have the freedom that they've served their time. Like you said, no, someone who was in for drug addiction, let's not get them in the hospital, going into patients' rooms or the keys to the drug cabinet. If someone had a problem with stealing money, maybe not make them a teller. But,
Right.
there's a situation, it's about common sense that this is what we do, and how to do it. Give them a second chance. My brother's been putting up groceries for 20 something. I've got a great IQ. I stopped playing games with him when I was young. Trivial Pursuit, you couldn't because he had all the cards memorized. He speaks 3 languages fluently, and he's putting up groceries because he got caught driving 3 times without a license. What a waste of humanity, of talent, of everything because of that. So yeah, I get a little feisty about that, but yeah, I've seen it. I know it. So.
No, but here's the thing, real quick, Becky. It's the 3 of us on this call and everybody in the chat. We can make a difference if we stand up. And I probably did, but when you're in a corporate setting, you can only be so loud to make a difference. And then you've got a target on your back, right? And I've lived it. So I can sit here and say it, and I can say it because I'm not in corporate America. Do I help corporate America? I do. Fix what's broken on purpose. That's my motto. And I think we have to start in 2026. We have to start standing up and saying these things and figuring out ways and getting in front of the people that matter, not the ones that are going to shove us away. There are so many jobs in this country that are unfilled.
Yes.
One thing we always need trash picked up alongside the road. I know that's not a glamorous job, but it gives somebody a start, right? Can you show up and do that? I was raised on a beef cattle farm. I've probably eaten more cow crap than any cow has ever left behind, right?
I knew you were full of it. Just kidding.
I know, right? I'm just
Joy knows I'm kidding.
No, I'm perfectly fine with it. We've got to start somewhere, and I'm willing to start. I just need some more folks to lock arms with me and come along for the journey. Go ahead, Beck.
No, what I was going to say is, after working in corporate America myself, and small and mid-size, companies, how many of those people should be in jail, really? And they're the ones who hold all the keys, and they sure have a lot of judgment and things to say on the matters. But I'm telling you, how many of them should actually be the ones behind bars, not just because of maybe some corrupt practices on their end, but how they treat people, and just there's so many systemic issues within the workplace that it just feels like, man, it's, you guys are right there with them, and wait until, maybe one day you will get caught, and one day you'll have to come back after you've done your time and see what kind of luck you have getting, job placement.
Right.
But it's a very sad reality that this is going on right now. And
Hold up the mirror. Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
And the way I usually bring it back to folks when they go, well, I don't have a record. I'm like, so in today's time, I said, if there were cameras like there are today, would you? Because I know for a fact, if there were cameras through every day of my life, every second I was walking around, I'd probably have a charge or two. And I would say most folks would, whether it's maybe drinking a little bit in public, maybe drinking underage, driving too fast, driving recklessly, what have you. Maybe it's assault because somebody irritated you at the football game, you two got in a fight and both you walked away. Guess what? That's a crime. That's still assault. So all the people that stand in judgment, have you never committed a crime? And if you have, how dare you throw it against someone else who that might have been the only crime they committed, and that's when they got caught.
Right.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I thought, I know Tori and I were kind of talking about this too. When people come out of prison and it's hard for them to get acclimated again into society. And I know in California, I'm not sure about the other states, but you can't run a criminal background check anymore. That's and I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? As HR, and it's with some of the work that I've done, I can understand the need for those types of DOJ or FBI background checks because it was part of that business. But otherwise, just not having to deal with that anymore, and
Yeah.
it's nice because you feel, or I feel as nature professionals, like, okay, we're giving this person, a new shot at life. And that's all they're looking for. I was also telling Tori that, in the city that I live in, I don't know if there's an arrangement with the city manager, but, we have, people who are being released, dropped off by the buses in our city. And it's, you see them with their envelope that has their, what was their house keys, their wallet, maybe a wedding ring or something like that. And you just see them, looking around like, what am I going to do? Right. And then a week later, you're seeing them on the corner, just completely hopeless. And it breaks my heart. And then you have, the community start complaining about the homeless community. And it's just like, how many of you are actually going and talking to this person and trying to help them and say, hey, what are you capable of doing? You know, um, and using that humanity in trying to uplift one another. So,
Well, we talked about rehab, and I'll
mhm.
go into some of the stupidity of rehab. I remember working in the Department of Corrections, state of Virginia. They would train barbers. You go to barber school, and the inmates loved it. Then come out and found out they couldn't get a barber's license with a felony record.
Yeah.
That's the stupidity of rehab. Oh, we're training them for jobs, and that's what the politicians would have said. Hey, we've got 600 people in the job skills training, and they're graduating, and when they get out, they can't get a job in what they're spending all that time for. I taught criminal justice classes for Mesalands Community Center, community college. Most of my students, it was online for inmates. What were most of those inmates going to do with a criminal justice degree? They can't be cops. They can't be parole officers. They can't be probation officers.
Right.
And actually, criminal justice doesn't go well towards being a lawyer. So, but you know what the state was saying? We're getting them degrees. We're getting them educated in an area where they'll never be able to work. That's brilliant.
That's
That's
another,
what we're doing.
another program that they think of, and I say they, legislators, politicians, the people in Washington, D.C., they create all these programs, but they don't think it through on how it actually, the resolution of it, because there is no resolution. There is no viable end to the means. And it just
Square.
is so infuriating.
Mhm.
They try to take a square peg and try to put it in a round hole. Because because they don't have the detail enough to go all over. So, I had a program where I ran for sex offenders, and everybody would be in it. And yeah, I had the guy who messed up. He had a sexual assault, first time young guy, and also I had what's called a sadistic rapist, a Ted Bundy type, all in the program. Why are we spending money and resources on this Ted Bundy type who will never rehab? He's a sadistic rapist. He is a serial killer. Why is he in a training rehab program and we're spending resources on that when it's never going to happen? Because if they're a sex offender, they have to go through that program. That's not helping. Why don't you let me decide who should be in the program? Well, because maybe you've got bias. We've got to be fair to everybody. That's where we get to a problem.
And I've seen that they've tried to incentivize companies to hire, criminals and offer like this tax break or what have you. But really, it's not. There's no wow factor to it where it entices employers to want to do that. So it's like, if you're going to take it this far, let's let's make it worth something. Let's make it where it's going to work instead of just spinning these wheels and spending, taxpayer money and everything else. We need to, really allocate those funds to where it's going to make a difference,
Right.
with employers.
Yep,
Let's
common
throw a
sense.
question at the chat. Should all convictions be evaluated the same? And for those of you that may be joining us in another country, we would love to hear your take on how you handle things in other countries. I know we've got one of our faithful podcasters in the chat, and I believe Varun is from India. So I would love he commented about my survey question earlier about, don't forward the email because the links are specifically created. And I was like, yeah, we know. Yeah, so many things that we could talk about, but we can move on, I suppose, from we
When
can
you
get
talk about
off.
surveys, why would they matter anyway? Most of the times when they were being done, whether it's at Lowe's, whether it's at Dollar General, what have you, to do the survey. Let's do it. We're never really going to do anything with it. We're going to go over it and we're going to have everybody come up with their plans and how they're going to fix things. And then 30 days later, we're back to business as normal. And then we get to next year's and if the same thing comes up, then the regional staff will come down because obviously enough wasn't done. I've been in those. I've been to HR those. They don't get to root causes. They get the symptoms. Oh, it's the supervisors that are the problem. Fire the supervisors. No, maybe you didn't give the supervisors any management classes. You promoted up Bill from forklift driving to be the supervisor because he's the best forklift driver. Didn't give him any management classes. He told he screws to pooch being a manager. So he's getting frustrated. You're writing him up. And he quits. Now you promote your next best guy up. All you're doing is getting rid of your best workers. But yet it's the supervisors who are the problem. No, the problem is you not offering management classes, but they're not digging that down, that you're seeing that across the service, get rid of it.
No, because we had a 98% return on the survey completion. That's what we want, right? We want that metric to say 98% of our employees completed the survey. Yeah, what'd you do with it?
Exactly.
Used it as a weapon against them?
And they're so expensive nowadays because they are built out that, whatever areas need the improvement, they help generate that action plan. All you have to do is just execute it. And, and so it's just, that's a lot of money. That money can be going towards employees, pay raises, bonuses, better benefits, whatever the case. And again, it's leadership flushing that money down the toilet. And it's like, why, what are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish here? So
you don't need to survey. If managers get out and talk to people, if HR, and I'll take the blame, HR. If HR figures a way to get out of the office and get on the floor and talk to people that work there, you don't need the survey because then you find out what the problems are to begin with.
Right.
Too many managers talk to their employees, not with their employees. And I'll take it, and HR does too. Everywhere I've been, in fact, when I was at Dollar General, when I said, you're on the floor for an hour every day, they looked at me like I was speaking in Latin. Even where I'm at now, it was like, I want you out in your individual departments at least an hour a week. Why? And now it is. Now they're visiting there because you can't build relationships.
Correct.
If you don't know the people, especially in HR, we're the voodoo, we're the evil. They're not going to come visit you. They got to get to know you as a person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tori.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I always made it a point that, I would say 80% of the time, I made a point once I got into the office, I was up on the top floor, bottom floor, just making my rounds. Sometimes I do affirmation cards. Other times I'm just, shooting the breeze and saying, hey, what projects you got going on, and just, you build that rapport with the employees. My office looked like a toy store because I had Funko Pops and little, Disney figurines and, a rubber chicken that, I said the name was Becky. Get it? Becky, Becky. Okay. Anyway, but I have a yodeling pickle. Anyways, it's just, you try and make it inviting, disco balls, whatever, because you are human. We aren't, unfortunately, there are a lot of HR professionals out there who are just, puppets. They just say whatever the CEO says. And we have a purpose. We are that link between leadership and employees, and it's up to us to try and foster those types of relationships with them. It's so critical, and yet our role gets so minimized and diminished, and it's just ridiculous.
I used to pride myself on knowing all of my employees by name within the first 30 days. So I could go out on the manufacturing floor and I could call you by name. And even in other departments that weren't my responsibility, right? I would engage and I would pride myself on knowing. And I knew I started developing, relationships with them, and I knew wives' names and husbands' names and kids' names, and kids were in college, and you just have that rapport with them, right? So a couple of weeks ago, I've remained friends with a few people, but I had dinner with one of my former colleagues. He was in my group, and he was in operations, and we're sitting at the table, and we were just talking about a few things, and he said all of my guys refer to BT and AT. And I was like, what? What does that mean? And he goes, well, there was never anyone like you before Tori, and there's never been anyone like you after Tori. So it's BT and AT. And I was like, oh, that's a great compliment. Thank you for that. I'm sorry that you're experiencing that, but makes me feel good.
I have a great boss. He didn't interview me, but when I came for the in-person interview, he sat me down and talked to me. And it was the first time I've ever been asked this question. He says, what's your buzz? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, why do you get out of bed every morning? What is your buzz? What gives you a reason to live? And I talked to him. I said, helping folks. I just got to do it. It's what I do. He said that was one of the reasons why he hired me, or he told the hiring group, you need this guy. It's that part of HR, and it's why there's burnout. And it goes on both sides, helping the people and then mentoring your group, because it's building a legacy. What is your legacy? What is your purpose? And it's not about, well, Russ did it. It's about what effect I've had down the road. The folks who texted me the other day, Jason Jeffers, call out. He's an HR director now. He started me as an HR admin. Now he's an HR director, and there's some others down there. And then one day he texted me, he goes, it's stuff I learned working for you that now I'm an HR director that I can do. So I might never see someone down in Australia. Hello, Bella. But something that we did, that she learned, now is affecting people in Australia. That's our purpose. Right. That's the buzz. That's what gets me going. So that's what HR is about. We're never going to be the applauded. We're never going to have the names called out. But just knowing that we have that effect, that's why I go to the office every day, because of the possible effect I'm going to have. And you don't know, I may touch someone today who touches someone, and that person is, if you're religious, got the next Billy Graham. You don't know. So you may have done something so small today that's going to touch millions. So why not do it? Do that, no matter how small it is, because you don't know the effects, the ripple in the pond. That's HR in a nutshell.
Yeah,
100%.
And one thing, if I can just say this, I'm not saying it's all, but I have noticed a slight pattern of HR folks who were thrown into HR. They didn't go to school, didn't get certifications, anything else. I felt, and I was one of those people, I know Tori was too. When you're thrown into it, you tend to bring that empathy into it. Whereas when you're going to school, I'm not saying it's, the entire case, but you're learning things from a book, right? It's all theoretical. It's not hands-on. And when you come in from it where you are essentially learning, the profession through hands-on experience, you're really seeing the human aspect of it first. So you have that appreciation, then you bring in all the, the schooling or whatever, resources you've learned along the way. But I'm not, again, that's just an observation I've had. And I just wish that it was something that was taught in school, having that empathy. Yes, all these laws are great. This is what, this is why metrics are important. And, these case studies, yada, yada, yada. That's great. But we're not going to be applying every single one of these things, in a company that has 20 employees. Right. And so, the human component, it just, I love that Tori invited me on this podcast, that we can have these taboo conversations, because we're calling out people who should not be in HR. And, hopefully we're inspiring others to say, hey, I had a terrible HR. I'm going to be in HR now so I can be the HR I wish I had, and there are so many stories like that. But one thing I just wanted to touch on is, like, we have risk management departments and, people designated specifically for that. Why? Because the majority of the time you have your leaders jumping over HR and going straight to their legal to, find those loopholes. And how do we stop them from doing that, Russell?
It comes at top. And that the best operational managers I've worked with were these alpha mentalities. But at the same time, let's say Mark, my buddy, when we were partners, I remember he had just become a district manager and he screwed up. And so I slammed his door shut and I said, I spent too much time making you the way I want you or getting you where I wanted you to be for you to screw up and now from them to have to take you out, bring a new one in, me start all over again. And he got really annoyed because he's an alpha. Excuse me. And he grumbled and he looked at me for a moment. Then he sat back and laughed. He goes, what did I do and how do we fix it? That's that partnership. And that's what is missing in too many. I've seen too many HR directors and above have little fiefdoms and where HR is going to control everything. I'll tell you what, I almost lost the job I'm at now when I was asked a question about how I do HR. I said, HR doesn't say yes or no. I said, I'm a subject matter expert. And when you ask me a question, what should be done, I'm going to give you the best answer I can. I'm going to tell you, if you do this, this is the cost. You do this, this is the cost. You do this, this is the cost. It's your company. You're the operator. I'm your subject matter expert. And if you don't listen to me, then just be ready to pay the cost. But that's my job. And I was told they want someone who's more in control. I'm like, oh, I'm very in control of the HR department. I said, but I'm not in control of the college. I'm not the college president. I'm not the company, CEO. I'm there to give my best judgment. CFO can give financial judgment. The CEO can always go against it. That's HR at the same time. But I've seen too many of them say, no, I'm HR. You will listen. And then that partnership brings down because then they don't come to talk to you anymore. You're not treating them as a partner. You're treating them as a child that you have to teach. And it's those best operational partners where they can come in and slam my door and just start cussing at me like a sailor because they can't do it out on the floor. They need to vent. And somebody out there is driving them nuts. So they can come in there and cuss for a while. And then we just look at each other, get up and go hit the floor together. And we don't have to always agree. But when we're on that floor, we do. Because we're partners. Nobody's going to play mommy daddy games with us.
Right.
So HR has to be a partner. And you got to seek it out because they will not. Because they will take your HR department if you let them. They're alphas. That's what they do. They gather control. So you set the boundaries. You're like, yeah, that's your warehouse. But these little officers right here is HR. You don't come pee in my pool or you don't get invited to come swim again. But there's not enough folks out there who are willing to have those conversations. That's the problem.
Right. Or if you push back, you're going to be handed a box and they're going to hold the door open for you. But sorry,
we've had that conversation before, right, Becky, about how, how do you not have to continually fight to get a seat at the table? Why aren't you already at the table? You're part of the leadership group, right? Why does it always seem like HR has to fight for a seat at the table? And, one of my big things, and I tell everybody openly, grew up in Southern Missouri. I'm just a basic old redneck girl from the country. And I said, I may not win the fight, but you're dang sure going to know you how to hold of something after we're done. because I'm going to make my
Exactly.
point. And I was just sharing, Becky, I think I was sharing with you that I got reprimanded one time by a CEO in front of about 15 of my peers and colleagues. And it didn't feel very nice. And I just kind of got quiet, you know. And at the end of the call, when we were closing out, they were going around the table and asked if I had anything to say. And I said, I just want to make this one point. You can yell and scream at me all day long, and I might wad up in a ball over in the corner, and I might sniffle and cry for a little bit, but buddy, you better look out when I get up out of there, because I'm going to come up swinging and you're the first target that I'm looking after, because I don't take kindly to being abused publicly in front of somebody when I didn't deserve it. If you want to reprimand me, you can do it in private. And I don't do that to any of my employees either. Any of the employees, if I have something to say, I'm not going to go out on the shop floor and make a presentation out of it just to wield my power, right? We do that in private. But
You got to have partners.
yeah.
I was a good story I had with Dollar General, and Bill was my boy. He was the warehouse director, and we had talked about, people taking responsibility. You be the boss of your people, not make HR the hammer. And we were walking around once, and it was outside of one of the buildings, and we could hear the manager inside talking to one of his folks, and he goes, "I'm sorry to have to do this, but HR says I have to do this documentation." And I looked at Bill. I'm like, "Are you going to talk to him, or do I talk to him?" And Bill goes, "I got it." So we went inside the house. He goes, "Excuse me." He goes, "You're a supervisor here at Dollar General." He goes, "If you want to remain a supervisor, you better become a supervisor, because what you did right there was not managing anyone. That's being a coward." He goes, "Cowards don't work for me." He says, "So straighten up." So we walked out of the office, and I said, "Bill, if I hadn't been with you and you heard it, would you have said something?" He just looked at me and goes, "Don't make me lie to you this early in the morning." He says, let's just continue our walk." But, it was fostering that, trying to build that, because it's not at a lot of places. That's why I've had to fix so much stuff in my past. They let management do that because it's easy to blame the voodoo HR thing, the mysterious thing nobody understands or wants to deal with. It becomes easier. And it's about getting people no longer to be cowardly, to have intestinal fortitude, to be able to take responsibility. No, you are getting this right up because you broke Dollar General policies, not HR's policies.
Mm-hmm.
Say it, own it, be a manager. And that's
Right.
what we're not doing. Like I said, the training's not there. Training people to have the uncomfortable. Like I told my folks, if you can't get comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations, you'll never be a manager, not anywhere I work. So that's what we have to get into.
Do you agree or disagree that issues that arise in the workplace, at least 80% of the time, can be resolved by just having professional conversations? I'm not saying obligatory, like, I'm going to back away and be a little wilting wallflower. I'm saying having necessary conversations, not screaming, not fighting, not, raising our voice, not being obscene, not being absurd, just having conversations. I have always felt like we can make more headway and reach more common ground if we just bring the problem to the surface, bring it to the table.
Yep.
And honestly, this whole podcast wouldn't have to be called the Taboo Table if we would just be honest in our work environments and bring problems to the table and not make people feel inferior, not make people feel silly for bringing things to the table, not laughing at somebody for asking a question. I've never laughed at anybody for asking a question. If you don't know, you don't know. And how do you handle it if you don't know? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk
Mhm.
about it. I've always just said, I believe at least 80% of problems and issues inside the workplace, inside an organization, can be managed or come to resolution effectively if we just talk about it.
And not be the blame. I mean, that's what most of the issues are. When we do talk, it's more about who's to blame for this,
Yes.
who's going to take
Mhm.
responsibility, than it is about, okay, how do we fix this?
Yeah. And I want to touch on some of the comments have been great, and I didn't mean to. We're right at time, but I'm okay for going over a little bit. I want to touch on something. Gregory said that they had the pardon law in Canada, so I'm going to have to get with Gregory and research that a little bit. Varun said that he hadn't dealt with anything in India about hiring people with a background. The courts are pretty strict there, I think, is what the comment said. And I wanted to touch really on Clarice saying in the U.S. corporate environment, the legal department is extremely conservative and makes all of these types of rules, but it also partially is driven by customer requirements. I appreciate that. I understand that the customer has requirements,
Yeah.
but part of the issue, I will tell you, Clarice, and I will fight you like a honey badger on this one. I will say, I don't think anyone really understands what the customer requirements are. Maybe we hide behind that. There are customer requirements, right? But do we hide behind that and just don't communicate to our teams? Because I've seen that happen too. We can't do it. That's a customer. Yeah, nope. Customer won't let us do that. Really? Will the customer not let us do it, or we just want to hide behind that? Like,
Right.
there needs to be better, effective communication. Better, effective communication.
I get it a lot from recruiter friends of mine. Well, the client did you ask? Well, yeah, and they said no. Did you tell them why you're wanting to do this? Well, they said no, and they might not, give me any more people. If you tell them why, you're the subject matter expert. That's why they came to you. You're the recruiter. That's why they're not doing it themselves. You are the subject matter expert. Tell them why.
Varun and his comment about, I wanted to give you an outstanding rating, but I have to mark you good because the HR bell curve.
Yeah.
Did you say that out loud?
How many times you here's your 2% increase because you've done such an amazing job this last year. I can't tell you that on paper, but you've really done an incredible, outstanding job.
And that includes your cost of living increase too.
Yeah, cost of living went up 14%. Here's 2%.
We really
They wonder why
you.
when the great resignation happened, so many people left and went elsewhere.
Yeah.
When employees had the chance to leave and go elsewhere, they did. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
That you're not doing it right. Well, they're not doing it now. No, it's an employer market. They know if they leave the job now, they're not going to find another one. Of course, they ain't going. But as soon as it swings back the other way, watch what happens.
100%.
Can't wait.
100%. Well, we didn't get time. I had a lightning round. On.
Let's do it real quick.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's do the lightning round. Do you need to go, Russ? Do you need to go?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
I'm good.
I'm just watching my dogs.
If we want to keep talking, I'll just tell you why I keep looking down. I have 4 wiener dogs that live in my house, and when I'm on a call or in a live like this, one of them, his name is Stanley, he puts his toy in the trash can because it's a game. He wants my attention. And then if I don't get his toy out of the trash can, he turns the trash can over. So he's being naughty right now. You need to go away. Let's do lightning round. And then if we want to throw out another topic, we can, if everybody is still good to go. Let's see. Questions about criminal records typically ask if you have ever been convicted of an offense for which a pardon or record suspension has not been granted. Well, that's a lot of words. That's a lot of fluff, and I call it fluff and hooey. That's a lot of fluff and hooey that you are circling around with.
But I mean, could I have been? Oh yeah. I'll go into a quick one on it. I had an issue when I was in Germany, actually. Actually, I was in Bosnia, got injured, came back to Germany, and found out one of the first sergeant of the company was doing something very bad to me personally. And yeah, I went to town on him. And I was locked up in my own holding cell overnight. I was the assistant police chief. I was locked up in my holding cell. And they decided, yeah, it's a personal thing. Could I have been prosecuted? Yep. Lost everything. Yep. Because I had lost everything. I was just coming back from a combat injury and I wasn't doing well. And he had messed with my ex-wife at that point in time. So yeah, I could just as easily be one of those out there with the background thing. So that's the reason why, what were the circumstances and why? Because the whys matter.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's-
let's not
that's
make
my
it
definition.
taboo to have a real conversation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Rapid fire. Here we go. Are
Mhm.
you ready? And Becky,
Yep.
you can answer too if you'd like.
I won't be as interesting as Russell.
Most employment gaps are irrelevant. Agree or disagree?
Disagree. Well, agree. They are irrelevant.
Oh, I
Like,
was going to say, wait a minute.
They are irrelevant. Useless.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Background checks are often used lazily.
Yep. They get a yes or no and they make a choice based on that. They never ask why.
Yep.
We create our own talent shortages.
Absolutely.
If I had a big black Sharpie marker, I'd write 100% on this and hold it up. We can't find good talent. Hiring managers
Get
are
rid of other
rarely
talent.
trained interviewers. You just said that. You just gave it away a while ago. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's a problem. They
Are we
ask
still
someone the
using?
stupidest questions.
Why are we still using the STAR method? Anyone? Are you familiar with the STAR?
I'm not using it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Me neither.
Well, I posted. I go into interviews with one question, maybe two. That's
Mhm.
it. And I
Yeah.
tell folks it's going to be on a panel with me, 1 to 2. That's it. You don't need more. If that interview lasts an hour, somebody's getting hurt because I'm not sitting there for an hour listening to stupid stuff and answering stupid questions or asking them, what kind of color would you be?
I love the strength and weakness questions.
Yes.
Tell
Mhm.
us your strength. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Okay, tell us all your weaknesses. Why? So you can weaponize them against me?
Yes, right?
I had a
And it
flat
shows
tire and I
you-
was late, and then the alternator went out on my car, so I was late again. All in 30 days, I was late 3 times. Doesn't make me a bad employee. It makes me need a new car. I can't get a new car if I don't have a job.
Exactly. I blasted them on this because I get in an interview and they go, so tell me about a conflict that occurred at work that you dealt with. Excuse me, I've been in HR for 25 years. Which of the 4,000 do you want to deal with? Ask me how I'm going to run an HR department, not tell you how I dealt with a conflict. Cater the interview to the person you're asking a question to. Don't ask, even an HR manager, was there ever a policy that you disagreed with? Hell yeah.
Mhm.
Of course there were. How did you
And
deal with it? I told them I didn't like it.
And these are loaded questions, really, because I'll be honest. I've been in interviews, and they'll say, "How do you handle this and this and this?" Well, first of all, I'm HR. I shouldn't be talking about details of things I've dealt
Right.
with, right?
Right.
Second of all, I on too many occasions would give too much information, and guess what? They didn't hire anyone because they just took my my answer and just implemented it because they're like, oh, we can do this. We don't need to hire someone and pay a salary. But anyways, I digress. Go on with your rapid fire.
No, I have to interject here. I'm a storyteller, so I have to tell the story. So I was interviewing for an HR manager job one time, and I was in a panel of 6. I had the GM, I had the safety guy, the HR manager that was leaving the company, the operations manager, and the transportation director, because we had fleet trucks. So I'm sitting there, and the safety guy's like gruff, didn't want to be bothered with it. He had lots of better things to be doing. And so he looks across the table at me, and, they're in the behavioral part of the interview.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, well, I only have a couple of questions for you. I want to know what motivates you to come to work every day. I said, you see this handbag I'm carrying? I like handbags. You see these shoes I'm wearing? I like to wear shoes. You see these clothes I'm wearing? I like ultra new fashion that no one else has. That's what motivates me. I like to pay my bills. I like to have a house to live in. What else do you need to know about me?
Mhm.
And
And
he's
these
like,
are
Kids like it.
silly questions. Yeah.
yeah, why do you come to work every day? I think you need a tablespoon of
Stupid question.
Miralax, my friend.
You know what I loved that Justin Jackson from a previous show had said? He said, there are no stupid questions, but there are a lot of stupid people. I
Justin's my
love
boy.
that,
I love you,
right?
Justin. I love Justin.
Justin is
Amazing.
awesome. I want to do a podcast with Justin just about his closes on his post because
Mhm.
they are mic drop moments every stinking time.
We've
Mm.
been able to converse off of LinkedIn. We actually call each other, and he is a great person. I love Justin to death.
And
He is
sorry, Russell,
awesome.
I promised him we would have another episode with both of you on it. Okay, so
Oh, he
Make it
probably
work.
got
in your
offended because I
calendar
was
now.
like, we're having Russell Irby as a guest. Ha ha ha. Because we had asked him a couple of weeks ago, hey, can you make our podcast this week? We'd really like to bring you back to the table. And he was like, oh, I got some family obligations. I can't make it. And I was like, oh, too bad. We're having Russell. Sorry.
You
And then,
snooze, you
then he's
lose.
like, man.
No, and I will tell you, I am so grateful that I've been able to, have this network on LinkedIn of people who is just like,
Mhm.
thank goodness you're there, right? You all bring your insights and all of your experiences and all of your expertise, and it's just like, wow, I'm constantly soaking it up, and you guys are just absolutely phenomenal. Russell, I think I connected with you with like as the closer to the summer of 2025, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this guy is awesome. And I know we had some exchanges on there, commenting back and forth, but it's it's really an honor to have you on the show.
We've
When
got to pull
Tori
the
told
curtain
me,
back
I
on
was like, oh
HR.
my gosh, what was that?
We got to pull the curtain back on HR. Tell people what HR really is.
Yes.
Show them, and it can be funny. We can poke the bear. I've
Yes.
got actually, it's been working on for over a year. The HR Honey Badger's Guide to Corporate Chaos. I'll probably be out hopefully within another month or so. And that's it.
Awesome.
It makes fun of HR. It makes fun of corporate and how it deals with it because we have to, because it should be made fun of right now.
Mhm.
It's buzzwords and performance reviews that are just performative acting and, how
And that's what,
PTO, unlimited PTO is a ripoff.
I've always just been, I'm just a simple farm girl. Really, I am. I'm just a simple farm girl from Southern Missouri. I was raised with good morals and values from a working class family. We had beef cattle. We drove, rode the school bus an hour and a half. And my parents just taught me good foundational stuff. Treat people, I don't care who it is. And people make fun of that meme that goes around on LinkedIn every once in a while. I treat the CEO with the same respect as I do the janitor. Yeah, you should. That's common decency, right? Shouldn't be a meme. It should be indoctrinated into every living, breathing person. Every living, breathing person should operate under that premise. And the way that I connect with people, I meet them where they are. I pride myself with meeting them where they are. And I've said it a million times. I've got people that don't have their next two dimes to rub together in my network. And I've got people that are gazillionaires that could throw their nose up at me and not even want to hang around with me. But I'm a little bit funny, I have a little bit of humor and good relationship building skills. But I'll tell you, and I've told this story before, Russ, but you might appreciate this. I was working in a warehouse setting, building displays, no air conditioning in the in the building, and I had like 350 people working. It was a really busy season, and 3 people called out that day, so I was jumping from line to line to line, like filling in where I could, because when you grow up on a farm, you do what's got to be done, right? You don't take a vacation. You don't go off and leave a cow that's getting ready to calve that, has had problems in the past. You just don't do it, right? And so I'm jumping in to help where I could. And it was hot in there and I was sweating, had my steel toe boots on, and I'm wiping my forehead. And I had a person come up behind me and said, hey, when you get 5 minutes, can I talk to you? And I said, yeah, sure. Just give me 5 minutes and I'll meet you right over there. And I go over and this guy, comes up to me and he gets right in front of me, and he's like, has this strange look on his face, right? And I go, what? What's the matter? What's wrong? What's going on? And he goes, you only have one eyebrow. And I'm like, oh, no worry. I got my eyebrow pencil in my purse. I'll draw it back on in a minute. It's so hot out here. I just sweated it off. Don't worry. Now, what did you need to talk about? And he goes, I don't know. It must not be that important because I completely lost my train of thought. I go, well, if you think about it, just come on back and grab me and we'll go have a conversation. But that's the way you relate to people. Like from then on, he knew that I wasn't above him or beneath him. I could meet him where he was, and he met me where I was. Right. And that's how you build relationships, and that's how you earn respect.
Relationships. And that's what I tell them in every interview. I tell my mentorees, HR is nothing but relationships. Mm-hmm. And that's all it ever be. The same guy I was talking about earlier when I first got there and they weren't meeting folks, got a call in and said, hey, when can I come to the HR to talk about my benefit stuff? And he told him, he says, well, probably about 1 o'clock today. And I said, why is they coming up here at 1 o'clock today? Well, it's the time when I'm best free. Why are you not going out there to receiving and talking to them out there? I said, because that sucker's going to walk up here. It's a 1 million square foot warehouse. He's going to spend 20 minutes getting up here, talking to everybody he can, hit the break room, hit the bathroom. He's going to talk to you for 30 minutes. He's going to spend another 20 minutes getting back to where he's supposed to go. Now we've lost half an hour to an hour of productivity for nothing. Get up, go where he is. Well, what if they're in the truck loading boxes? Pick up some boxes, and that changes mentality. It changes things, how they think about HR. I'm not saying I'm going to go out there and throw boxes every day because it's not my job. If I did, my boss would have my hide. I'm not paying you to throw boxes, son. Correct. That's a poor return on investment. I can pay somebody for that. But that you're willing to go out there and talk to them where they are and build a relationship. That's what it's all about with everyone. And that relationship's going to be different. We have to be different to different folks in there because we got to relate to them where they're at that moment. Right. And it's no different being an investigator or however that goes. You be who you need to be for that person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I don't know, Tori. I think we're going to have like a future month where we just have Russell on every Thursday so we can go over hiring stuff. We can just go over all the things because, I mean, my gosh, he's got his hand, he's got his finger on the pulse. That's what I wanted to say. You've got your finger on the pulse and you just call out the BS for what it is. And
I don't have time for it.
What was that?
I don't have time for it. I'm too old. But I don't have time.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I agree 100%. You don't have time for the BS. Let's cut to the chase, right? And it starts with us, you guys. I said, I have never felt more free to speak about things that we should have been talking about in corporate America. And if you think you don't have a voice, you do have a voice. Now, maybe we need to tailor it. Maybe we need to drill it down just a little bit. Maybe, I need to button it up just a little bit. But here at the table, we can talk about everything and anything, and we can take it back to corporate America professionally and start fixing what's broken on purpose.
Yep. Right? Do your job. Yep. Do your job.
And if you don't know what your job is, ask somebody.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is not enough mentoring going on. Like I said, they get their degree, they get the MBA, they haven't never done human resource. They come out and they might even start as an HR manager. Sadly, I started as an HR manager. My first job was a company just went through a DOL audit and they'd never had HR before. And he goes, fix that. It was a baptism by fire, but I was also a trained combat MP from the Army. Yep. I'd already ran methadone centers. I was already on board. So I knew I already had some management skills. It's the best management school in the world, the United States Army. So, but that person never having a management spot, and they get the bad habits or they learn bad habits from the operational side because they don't stand up yet. And then they teach them to other folks come up underneath them. That's why we have a whole group of folks that have no clue what HR is, that it's all about compliance and admin and
Yep.
not about the people, and not understanding that they can push back because they just came right in. And whether it's a 22-year-old guy, girl, whatever, and they're going up against a 25-year person in that foundry warehouse operations manager, they're eating them alive because they're telling them the way it's going to be. And they're like, okay. Because they don't have the scars yet. Like I said, the scars, they haven't walked through the crocodile waters. They just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And that's what's a problem in our industry.
Absolutely. Amen
I
to that.
love Gregory said, thank God I followed this guy, Russell Irby. We're saying all the things. Look, you're welcome back at any time. We probably should. It's 20 minutes after 8. We've gone almost an hour and a half. I could talk to you all night, so we'll just make it a regular cadence and see if we can get some other of the folks that we've had on before. Speaking of Department of Labor, Rod Samra worked for Department of Labor for 25 years as a compliance person, and he brings a lot of insight to the table, and we love to have him on the show too.
A lot of stories.
Yeah, a lot of stories. And some of the stories, when you said baptized by fire, that's a Midwest term, right? You get baptized by fire, you get thrown into it. And that's the way I got my first HR job. I knew how to do payroll, right? In the construction company. Guess what? You don't get summers off. You go with your mom to work, and she's going to teach you how to do payroll. And I learned how to do garnishments manually. And so I was marketable, right? I was marketable when I, entered the workforce. You know how to do payroll? I was like, yep. You know how to do per diems? Yep. Because I know truck drivers. Yeah. All that.
That means your holidays and your vacations wrapped around payroll. People don't understand that part. Yeah. My HR folks went in during Christmas break because they had to do payroll or people weren't getting paid. They don't understand those hours later. You get called at 9:00 on a Friday night because something's blowing the hell up at work. They don't understand that part. And some of the other new folks don't either, that it's not a 9 to 5 when you do HR ever.
Nope. Yeah.
And we need to do a show one time about talking about, all the things we do behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yep. Bring some tissues because there's going to be a lot of crying going on inside and outside.
Yeah. I can share some real doozies with a lot of different folks. I had to have, yeah.
I'm bringing a roll of toilet paper because there was a lot of, stuff.
I keep it right here because that's where I have my phone calls sometimes. They're not for people, they're mine.
Yeah.
So
oh gosh.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to let you all close and then I'll do final closing comments, but whoever wants to go first, Becky or Russell?
Becky.
I'm sorry, I heard Russell say Becky and then I heard Tori say Russell. So
go ahead,
Russell, you are the guest of honor, sir. Go for it.
And it's just a matter of concentrate on what we do. HR, let us be your partner. Stop telling us what our job is. Allow us to be your partner and help you succeed. If you are HR, stand your ground, understand your territory. You fight for your territory because you owe it to the people at that workplace to be that soundboard for them. Walk your razor's edge that we do between the job and the people and never lose your integrity, because once you do, you ain't getting it back. Not that job.
Amen to that. Integrity all the way. Thank you for saying that, Russell. And I actually had something to say and it's gone. So back to the studio.
Well, I wanted to give you an opportunity to plug your nonprofit though.
Oh,
Russ.
yes.
Thank you. My nonprofit is the Reset Project Foundation because it's to help people get a reset on their lives. They come out of prison, they come out of rehab, or like I said, just in veteran situations, and they don't know. I mean, a lot of them have never had a job, especially those going into rehab or the inmates. They may have been inside for 10 to 15 years. The world is different. You brought it up earlier than it was 15 years ago. AI, 2 years ago, I didn't even know what AI was. And they're not using AI in the cell. So
Mhm.
there is a whole world they don't understand, and they need training. They need help because God knows I had a regional HR director who got laid off, and he sent me his resume. I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, when did you last do this? The 1980s? And he was like, well, yeah.
Right.
And he's a regional HR director, and his resume was garbage that I had
Yeah.
to work with him to get redo. What do they think that guy that's been in prison for 6-7 years is going to look like? It's got no chance of getting a job out here. So that Reset Project Foundation, it is about getting people to reset on their life and building their life back.
I want to be more involved in that. If I can do it from Texas, I want to be more involved in that.
And I'll be posting more on LinkedIn about it. As soon as I'm waiting till the IRS finishes their slow walk with my nonprofit status before I really push it hard, but it's going to get pushed.
That's exciting. That is amazing.
Thank you.
Perfect. Did you think of your thought, Becky?
I did. Russell was saying that, let me do my job. And it's like, yeah, why don't you let me do the job that you posted an advertisement for in, explicit detail that I fit checked all those boxes. So let me do the job I was hired to do. So yeah, amen. Because you start and it's just like, oh, I'm sorry. You want me to bring you a glass of water? No, just kidding.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
back to you, Tori. Now for your feedback, Lady O.
Well, I will close us out by saying that let's end it where we started. Hiring isn't broken because people are lazy. It's broken because systems go unchallenged, and that's what we're here for. Employment gaps don't disqualify talent. Complacency does. Over interviewing doesn't protect organizations. Indecisions weaken the organization. And tonight, if something surfaced for you that made you uncomfortable in your leadership practices, it's not an attack, it's data. It's what's happening in the everyday, folks. If you want a disciplined look at how your organization actually works, where bias hides, where friction lives, and where leadership hesitation is quietly costing you, I have a tool just for you. I worked on it diligently. It's called the Executive Diagnostic. It's live in my website. It's a tool, not a personality test, and it's certainly not a survey. It's a structured examination of your people systems because we don't just talk about what's broken here, we fix it, and we fix it on purpose. If you're ready to examine your organization with clarity instead of comfort, visit 922solutions.com for more information, and we will see you next time. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thank you again to Russell
Thank
Irby.
you for having me
Thank
on.
you. Thank you.
Always thank
Enjoyed
you
this.
to Becky. And we are going to see you next time at the Taboo table. Until then, everyone, farewell.